5, 4, 3, 2. 5, 4, 3, 2. Five, 4, 3, 2.
Well, I think I head faked a few of you out there with a couple of false beginnings. Hey, everybody, Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Advisor. It is a Wednesday night. It's the first time we've ever broadcast on a Wednesday night that I can remember. I don't think we've done a Wednesday night before. I am so excited to be talking to you. We got so much to cover tonight, so many things I want to talk about. We probably won't get near as much done as I'd like to in the short amount of time we're together. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on a replay, thank you so much for watching on a replay. It's going to be a good night. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to cover a ton of topics. I think I listed a lot of them on there today, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about a lot of things. But let's get the show rolling first, and I'll get into all the topics. All right, so once again, Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Advisor. If this is the first time you've been with us, or if you haven't been around much, this is what I do. I talk hockey. I talk about the process of moving and evolving from youth hockey into junior hockey, and from junior hockey onto college hockey. This has been a really, really bizarre year. We all know that. By the way, I'm not a family advisor. I don't try to pretend to be a family advisor. It's not my role. I do give guidance on how to deal with hiring family advisors. I do have videos on setting up a process to get you involved at a much greater level in marketing yourself, exposing yourself to the colleges and to the junior ranks. Those are available for free, no charge. You can go on our websites and take a look at that, juniorhockeyadvisor.com. Click on the buttons. I highly recommend, if you haven't done that, do that. So let's talk about a lot of things. We got just a ton of things to talk about. I want to start off with saying I did a little bit of just sitting here waiting to get rolling, and I polled. There's 13 USHL teams playing right now, so I looked at 11 of the 13 teams. So I didn't get through the last two. Had to get on the show, had to get rolling. Didn't have a chance to get through the whole process, but I looked at 11 teams. And what I found is, on average, a USHL roster right now has 5.5 players that are not committed. Just 5.5 players. The rosters are chock full of Division I talent right now. And why that's important and why that is meaningful is we're extremely early in the year. Remember, the season started late. Everything started processing late, and we've got this condensed amount of teams. USHL is condensed. The North American Hockey League is condensed. The AJ is basically a non-American league right now, AJHL, which is the fourth largest producer of Division I players, and the BCHL is still kind of in this flux period. And remember, we lost, if you're looking at it from Americans' perspective, and we got a lot of Canadians that watch the show. I see Rod's on there from Northern Ontario. I think I saw some other friends on there from north of the border. But if you're looking at it from Americans' perspective, there's 50% less playing in the BCHL, so that pushed down. So I've said many a times on the show, this is going to be the best year for American junior hockey ever, as far as the amount of talent and the amount of competitive games, as long as they get to play the games. Now, that's a whole other issue, that we can get into. But with only 6 players, 5.5, 6 players on average per USHL team, that means the amount of time that needs to be utilized for college coaches to watch those games and to get an assessment of that is going to be lightning fast compared to a normal year. In other words, you don't have to watch the whole roster. You don't have to watch half the roster. Some of these teams have one defenseman. If you're looking for a defenseman, pretty easy to watch that and get a good assessment and find out where you stand on that. So why I want to talk about this and start off the show with this is because there's a panic, and believe me, I still have a player playing in the junior ranks myself. It's my last one. And the reason why I think it's important that we talk about this is there's a panic on the 2000 and 2001 birth years that they're not going to have any looks from Division I schools, and they're not going to have any opportunities to play. Part of that is because the NCAA, I think this is back in October, changed the rules to allow players that are in the system right now 1 year, even if this team plays this year, even if their college team plays, and let's say they play almost a full season or a full season, they still have a year of eligibility added on. So normally you have 4 years of eligibility. You can play all those 4 years and still come back. So really what's happening is you've got a super senior class that could actually develop. So you've got your freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior years. Then you've got the super senior year. The kids can stay for 1 more year. Now, it's important to look at this and really think this through from many levels. But the first part of this is how many players will take advantage of that? And that's the big question right now. How many players are actually going to take advantage of that extra year? Now, if you're playing inside of the full pay schools, the Ivy League schools, which all took the year off, some players did opt to go back to the USHL and continue to play juniors during the season. Many did not. So they're not in any organized fashion playing anywhere now. But if I'm a player and I'm a senior right now and I don't have a senior year, do I come back for 1 more year even though I'm going to graduate at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, whatever the tuition is, maybe more? I did not do the homework on what all the Ivies are paying right now, but it's pretty safe to say you're going to pay $60,000, $70,000 or more for that 1 year. Is it worth it? Will they do that? Will the kid at Union, will the kid at RIT, make that decision to come back? And then remember, every team carries 28 players. If there's 28 players in the roster, there's only 18 scholarships allowed for a full scholarship program, Division I program. If there's only 18 and there's 3, 4, 5 players on that roster, do they take advantage of that are not getting any kind of financial assistance at all? There could be more. There could be 10 players, depending on how they divvy up their scholarships. Do those players take advantage of that extra year? And so the common sense answer is there's going to be players that have the opportunity to do something, to accomplish something. Maybe they're going to, 1 more year will help them develop into a pro player. 1 more year will help them, get a graduate degree done. But if you read the rules on the NCAA situation, yes, the team can have that player come back, but it looks to me like that will count against a incoming freshman. So this could be a situation where it's cutting off your nose in spite of your face if you are a college coach or you're a college program. So I load my team with these players that stay around for 1 more year. Well, the natural progression of a college team is large freshman class in attrition in freshman and sophomore year. In other words, I might start out with 8 freshmen, and by the end of the year, I've got 6 or 5 for many different reasons. They don't fit into the school academically. They don't play. They choose to leave. They get cut. Whatever the situation, not trying to get into the details of why a freshman does, but there's natural attrition, freshman and sophomore year. Normally, junior and senior year is pretty solid. It's rare that you see a junior or senior. I should say that statistically, it's less than a freshman or sophomore year as far as the attrition goes. So we've got this pyramid. And, freshman class big, sophomore class smaller, junior class smaller, but the junior and senior classes stay about the same size. So, let's just say, and I think I threw some numbers down just to play around with this a little bit. Let's just say that I have a freshman class of 8 that goes to 6 in my sophomore year. That goes to 5 and 5 or 6 and it goes 8, 7, 6, 5. Let's just use that going across the board. So if I have 3 or 4 players that choose to stay around for that extra year, that means I can't bring in 3 or 4 freshmen. And that class we know statistically is where my attrition's at. So if you're looking at this from an analytical side, a college coach has to be extremely careful on how far he pushes this to take advantage of it. And right now, I've heard a lot of colleges talking, a lot of coaches and a lot of junior coaches talking about how the response from college coaches are. And the college coaches are licking their chops thinking they're going to get players to stick around longer. And it might actually be a disadvantage for that program to do that, especially if you have to have a large freshman class coming in this year or next year. So just as we play with this, if there are some college coaches out there listening, watching, please do some long-term thinking on this. Please put some long-term thought process into this, because I think those 2000s and 2001s, first of all, everybody's going to be fine. Everybody's going to find a place to play. Because if there is a logjam there, that just means that the Division III ranks in those premium programs, your Norwiches, your Middleburys, your Wisconsin Superior, your other Wisconsin programs, who am I missing out there? There's some great programs out there. I'm just trying to list off a few of them. They're all going to just get chock full. Geneseo, they're going to get chock full of talent, and it's just going to trickle down. It's happened before when there's a very, very large class. The 99s were the last ones. But before the 99s, I think it was the 95s or the 96s. One of those classes was really, really big with a lot of talented players. Just a big USA Hockey group of players came through. And so it trickled down to all the ranks, and everybody found a place to play. But I only bring this up because I think it's important that we remember that, you could possibly hurt your program in the long run if you take advantage of too many players that stick around. I personally believe that it's going to be very difficult for a player, unless he has money there or can afford it, to pass up graduating with his senior class and pass up moving on, unless he's a real integral part of, you're going to come back and you're going to be an All-American. You're going to come back and it's going to push you to a better paying job in Europe for hockey, or maybe the East Coast or the AHL. I can understand those players coming back to develop, but that good player that's already on the brink of the AHL or on the brink of a good contract in Europe, they're not going to want to stick around. They're going to want to go out and make money. They're going to want to push that and go. So, I'm not really sure how far that senior class, that super senior class will affect in the long run, but it's worth talking about. So enough of that. I know I kind of rambled on a little bit about that. Let's say hi to some people first, and then we'll get on to my first big topic. I want to walk through the World Juniors, and I want to walk through the roster, and I want to really answer some questions you had. Some people were asking online on our discussion group about, how do you get on those teams? Who are those guys? What are they made of? I'm going to break all that down for you, and we're going to have some fun with that. But first, let's say hi. I see Ken from Redondo on. Mark's from Bloomington, Minnesota's on. Patrick's watching from Toronto. Kent is from Saskatchewan. Hey, thanks for coming on, Kent. Brendan's on from Cleveland, Ohio. Hey, thanks for thinking that I'm doing a decent job there. Dan's back on from Sheboygan. The second best Sheboygan. Sheboygan, Michigan starts, and then Sheboygan, Wisconsin is real close second place. Sean's on there. And Sean, you got a question. I'll try to get that in a little bit. When we get to questions and answers, I'll come back to that. Rod's on from Northern Ontario. Jeannie, my cousin from Flint's on. Dana's on from New Hampshire. Rob in Chicago. Louise in Riverside, California on again. Great to see everybody. thank you so much for telling us. If you're just coming on board, let us know where you're from. It's time to get into this presentation, though, because I think you're going to enjoy this. I think you're going to like what we're going to talk about here. Let's throw this up, and we're going to take a look at the national team. This is the U20 national team. Over the holidays, the USA Hockey national team, it's our U20 junior team, will play. And they'll play, it'll be Canada and Russia and Sweden and Finland, all these great programs. And it's going to be tough. This year, Canada's stacked, and we'll talk a little bit about Canada. I didn't break down Canada's roster. Maybe I'll do that next. But I want to break down and show you a little bit about this. A lot of people had the question about, how do you get involved on that? Well, let's break this down a little bit. So this roster is made up of, let me see if I can get on this page here, is 24 players are born in 01, 6 players in 02. Now, I still use the 30. I think they dropped it down today. They might have. If they didn't, let's just talk about the 30. It's going to break down to 25. It's going to reduce down, but it's not going to change much about where these numbers are at and what we're looking at here. So you've got 24 players that are 01s. You got 6 players that are 02s. Where they're currently playing. Now, the one that's the NHL, is he really in the NHL? No, but he signed with the NHL, and it looks like he's going to start with the NHL. And I'm trying to figure out who that was. Oh, that was Nick Robertson. He's signed with an NHL team. So there's at least 2 guys already that are going to be NHL, AHL players this year. 3 are playing major juniors. 22 are NCAA players already. 2 are in the USHL. Now, you'd say, wow, why would they take USHL players? Look at the elite level players. Don't be fooled by that. Those USHL players, although many of those players played in the USHL or they played in the National Development Program, those 2 in the USHL are actually college players that came back to the USHL because their college program was suspended for the year. So that number, those 2 players in the USHL actually have experience at the NCAA level already. So that's where your players are currently at. And it's chock full of talent. So let's take a little bit deeper dive into this and see if we can figure some things out. So those 22, or actually 24 players that are NCAA players, where are they playing? Well, there it is, guys. 5 from Michigan, BU, BC, Minnesota, Providence. Now, there's a couple other schools. North Dakota's got one. Notre Dame's got one. Let's see who else. Harvard's got one. There's other players, too, that make up this. But this is where your core of your players are at. And you'll see this year in and year out. These are your top programs that put players or where these elite players gravitate towards. Now, you say, well, geez, these teams are not even first place in their division. These teams are good, but, there's a lot of great teams at that level. Well, that's because a lot of these players play their freshman year and move on, or they play freshman, sophomore year and move on. And in the case of many of these programs, they've got incredible talent. They just can't keep the talent through junior and senior years, or now the super senior year. But this is where your NCAA talent lies for these programs. Now, what that looks like, as far as the leagues, it looks like this. They play in the Hockey East and they play in the Big Ten. That's all these, these first round, second round, third round players, that's where they're playing. You're not seeing too much coming out of the West. You're not seeing anything else coming out of like the ECAC right now as far as players. Now, this trend changes once in a while. There'll be a team that'll get hot for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But for the most part, it hasn't changed much. If you go back and track these teams and you track because you're looking at this and you're looking at this junior team, what you're looking at is all of our USA Hockey first and second round draft picks. That are 2001 and 2002 birth years. This is the majority of them. If they're not a first round draft pick, put it this way, there's no 01 draft pick that's a first round draft pick that isn't involved that I know of. I could be wrong, but and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. So you're looking at our best of our best youth players, okay? Now, that's where they play at. It's been that way. BU, BC, Michigan, Minnesota have always been the places that they end up at. Been that way for years. So let's talk about the NHL draft picks in this group. 10 are first rounders, 11 are second rounders, We've got 4 that are third or fourth rounders, and we've got 3 that are fifth to seventh round players. These are all great players, but I think there's only a couple players that are not drafted. One is a projected top 10 draft pick. He's just not in this draft. He'll be in the next draft coming up. So you're talking about, once again, the best of our best. So when we look at this and we look at this group, one thing to keep in mind is, that looks awesome. You look at those numbers right now and you say, oh my gosh, what a star-studded group of players, until you realize that Canada this year is going to have to cut first-round draft pick players to actually get their roster reduced to the size they need to. They've got so much talent up there this year as far as first-round draft picks go. Now, it's just, that's the way it is this year. It's not a bad thing. We've got an incredible roster. We've got incredible players on this too, but some of these other programs have got just as good or better than we do this year. It's going to be very interesting to see if talent that was picked and chosen by the NHL actually can merge and mesh together into a team to win this thing. And I would say odds-on favorite right now is Canada, and we're right up there. But it's going to be who can mesh together the quickest on this. But COVID, throw odds making out the window with this pandemic situation. I don't even know. I can't keep up with the news on all this stuff about what players cannot go, what players are in camp, what players are not in camp. Shorten preseason for these things. It's a madhouse on all this stuff. So what I would normally be able to confidently say about this, now I'm just kind of tempering it and saying I'm not really sure exactly what's going to happen with this. But anyway, there's our NHL picks. Let's look a little bit deeper into this because I think there's some pretty cool stats we can pull out of this. Let's talk about origins. Where are these players coming from? Now, if the players played a season or two in any of these areas, I gave them a credit for it. Well, the National Development Program, 19 of these players have national development experience. The ones that don't are most of the ones that went major junior. There's several players on here that went right to the major junior. And there's a couple that went to the North American Hockey League, into the USHL, and then went on to Division I college. So not every player had to come through the National Development Program, but that's a pretty significant amount of players. When you're talking about 30, 19 of them came through there. Look at the prep number. Now, this prep number includes, I think, 4 or 5 Shattuck players in there. So Shattuck St. Mary's out of Minnesota is not East Coast prep. But combined, there's still 15 players in this group. Half the players came through prep. Now, normally, you have the Minnesota model, you have the Michigan model, and you have the Massachusetts model. And Mass is your prep. Detroit is your Tier 1 elite, your HPHL model. It's that like in the Toronto market, the GTHL. It's midget hockey. It's U18, U15, 16, and 18 hockey coming up. In Minnesota is Minnesota High School. But this trend we're seeing now in USA Hockey is they're really finding players and courting them through the prep programs versus in larger numbers than normal. Usually it's pretty, I shouldn't say usually, it's trending now towards prep, but it's not unfair to say that in the past it's been a third. Minnesota high school kids, along with that traditional Tier 1 elite HPHL kid, and then the prep kids too. But we're really skewed high on prep right now. But it doesn't mean that these kids still haven't touched the Tier 1 Elite League and HPHL, that third bullet point down. We still have 11 players that came through Tier 1 Elite and HPHL. 6 of these players played USHL hockey, 3 major junior. 2 kids actually came up through the ranks on the North American Hockey League. Only 1 Minnesota high school player. So you're looking at this and you're thinking, wow, Minnesota, what happened? Don't worry. Minnesota high school hockey is fine. It's still great. It just so happens that this group here, there's a lot of Minnesota kids on this team, but they're just not coming through the high school programs. A few of them came through Shattuck. Some went the prep route, and it just went in different directions. So here's a stat. Here's something that's interesting. I say it all the time. Elite hockey starts early and it can continue. When people say there's burnout and they say, well, you can't play elite because it's burnout, that makes no sense to me, because you can play recreational and not burn out. You can be a really good player that plays travel but doesn't, push to be one of the elite players, and you don't burn out. Burnout's burnout. It doesn't matter what level you're playing at or how good you're at. But look at this. 22 of these players played in the Quebec, not just the Quebec, but they played in the top division of the Quebec tournament, okay? 22 out of 30 players played in Quebec. That's 12-year-olds, okay? That means that they were already playing elite hockey at 12, and this is not a late blooming group. 11 of these kids, a third of the group, more than a third of the group, played in the Brick, 10-year-olds, okay? So yes, I truly do believe that you can start a process at 10 years old and be on course for where you want to go in hockey. I know that that's controversial. I know a lot of people don't believe it. They believe in late bloomer. I don't believe in late bloomers. Okay, I believe in players that get bigger later in life. I believe in players that put more effort and work later in life and become what they consider late bloomers because they have a huge growth spurt. You've seen the video before I did about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, where we talked about Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman, and all three of them had huge growth spurts. I mean, and one of them had over a foot growth spurt. So, between when they weren't somebody till when they were somebody in their sport. I think it's very interesting, though, that there's 22 players that played in Quebec at 12 years old, and they still continue to move on. There wasn't an attrition level. I've done other videos on this. The Brick in the 99, 2001 classes, go look at the Brick yourself and look at the amount of players that continue on. They defy the players in the Brick, which the Brick teams are recruited teams. The Brick teams are all-star teams of the best. They put a lot of effort into building this roster. Some of these rosters, the coaches start a year in advance on these teams to start putting the Brick teams together. I know I'm preaching to the choir. A lot of you know this already. But this Brick tournament, what's interesting about it is it defies the odds on all the attrition numbers you get from Hockey Canada and USA Hockey. The numbers are unbelievable on the amount of kids that play through the age of 18 and beyond that played in that tournament. So when people say, "Oh, you can't start, working hard," I just don't buy into that theory. I don't buy into that you can't work hard young or you can't play elite hockey at a young age, but you can play for fun and not burn out. It doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, that's my take on that. But I thought that was interesting to know that number. I thought I had another slide on here, but the bottom line is I wanted to show you how that broke down, and I wanted to show you where these kids came from. I know I didn't put it on there, but I've got it right here. I want to tell you the states they came from. Now, this has been going back and forth because a couple of these kids are, a kid that's been, I'll give you an example. My son graduated in Michigan. He played in the Tier 1 Elite and in the HPHL. His team turned into an HPHL team in Michigan. So he graduated high school there. So everybody assumed he was a Michigan kid. He wasn't. He's from New York. He was born and raised here, but he played a few years in the Michigan market. There's a ton of these kids that played in markets outside of where they're from, so people think that they're from Michigan or they're from Minnesota or wherever the case may be. But the numbers broke down. Massachusetts had 5 kids in this group. Minnesota had 4. California had 5. Michigan only had 2. Illinois had 2. Illinois had 2. And then the gamut: Texas, New Jersey, Connecticut, Wisconsin, Rhode Island, and one kid from, I think, Kazakhstan, I think it was. I can't remember. Borat. I don't remember where he was from, but he was from somewhere over there. And I bring that up because, your traditionals are always Minnesota, Mass, New York, and Michigan. And they all represented Michigan being the lowest, even though a bunch of the players played there. Now, don't forget that the National Development Program is also in Michigan, too. So if they played HPHL for Honey Baked, or they played, for one of the Detroit area teams, even though they weren't from there, then they went right to the National Development Program. Many people could have seen those kids out of the Detroit market or the Michigan market for 3, 4 years, 5 years, and just assume they're from that area. But no, actual Michigan kids on the roster is only 2 right now. So I hope that helped a little bit. How do you get involved with these teams? Well, you better be an NHL draft pick. That's the first thing is, if you're not at 14, 15 years old already being courted in that realm, these are, the majority, we talked about it, the majority of these kids are first and second round draft picks. These players at 14, 15, 16 years old were already playing elite. They're already at high level preps. They were already committed. The majority of these players were committed early to programs, and these are all NCAA players. So if you're ever looking to play at the junior stage for the national program, the best bet is getting started early. For many players or many people that are watching right now, it's not an option now. You're beyond that. But if you're still young, this is something that, if you're not at an elite level at 14, 15 years old, getting into the national development program is very difficult, because they literally start going out there and watching young bantams, and they scout players early on, because it's a U17 team. They want to make sure these players are positioned properly to move on into their program. So once again, hope that helped. Give me some comments on that. Let me know. Some new people have popped on. We've got Chris from Rhode Island that came on. Tim from Kansas City came on. Donald from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, right across the street, right across the locks from Sault Ste. Marie, Canada. Bill Zahn from Connecticut. Great to see you all. Throw your comments on if you got them. I want to jump into a couple other questions you had, and then we'll see if we can knock off some of the questions that have arisen since we went live tonight. The biggest, there's my little list of questions here. So we covered World Juniors. The next one was the USPHL bubble. For those of you that don't know, the USPHL and their NCDC teams are in Florida. And what they did was they got a resort area, and they created a semi-bubble. And my first comment right away is, listen to the commissioner of the USPHL discuss this. Go to our discussion group, Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. You'll see the podcast on there. It's called the Whistleblower Podcast. I think it's in green. It's got a little line from voice modulation that's live on there. Jeff does a great job of interviewing this. Jeff was also a former leader of the USPHL. So you got one guy talking to the other about this whole bubble situation, and it is great information for you. It's great to hear how this is working, what their thought process is, and what's going on. Now, remember, you believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. With this pandemic, I'm finding that to be an extremely sound advice as far as statistics go around COVID. This is a political hotbed. I don't want this show or our discussion groups to become politicized to the point where we get rants on about the mask wearers, the non-mask wearers, and all this. But I can tell you this: there were some facts that were put on the USPHL's press release that just weren't true. And what I mean by that is, yes, they're down there in the bubble. Yes, they've started this process. I give them tons of credit for being creative. I give them tons of credit for thinking outside the box, trying something different. And remember, it's easier for this league than any other junior league that is at that level. The NCDC can easily move their operations. And the reason they can easily move their operations is because there is no tie to fan base. And although many of the rinks right now have restrictions on the amount of fans that are in the door, the NCDC has on average 100 or less fans at a game. It just doesn't draw. Now there's a couple of the newer markets have a few fans, but it's not a league that draws fans. So they're not losing huge gate revenue to move their programs down there, and they also are being subsidized by the players paying for their travel and paying for some of their food and accommodations. So players would have to pay for that if they were with a billet. So if they're down there and they're paying just a few $100s more to be in Florida and to be at a resort and still play hockey, I don't think any player is going to argue with that. But on the press release, it said that the Ivy League was also going down there under the same bubble in the same facility, the same resort facility. First of all, the Ivy League doesn't exist as a hockey league. The Ivy League plays in the ECAC. The Ivy League teams that have hockey play in the ECAC. The ECAC only has 4 teams up in operation right now, and none of them are Ivy. The Ivies shut down. Their president shut them down, I believe, in mid-November, and they've stayed that way since. Now, the reason that's important is because facts are not always facts unless they're actually happening. That did not happen. Now, there may be some Ivy League players that went down there to train. I can't tell you that didn't happen. But I can tell you that the Ivy League is not starting up a league, and the Ivy League and the ECAC are not in the bubble. Now, when I say that, things with this pandemic are changing daily. Things are changing overnight. I mean, quick, boom, all of a sudden this program's down or this program restarts up. Look at college football and all the things that have happened with that. Look last night in the NFL. A player was warming up. They literally went out and took him off the field, and he was around all of his teammates, but they didn't take the rest of the teammates off. I don't even understand that. I don't understand the logic on that. But anyway, the bubble situation there is great. I can't give you enough information on this. I strongly urge you to listen to that interview that I posted on the Junior Hockey Advisor discussion group. I think that'll help a lot. I'll try to answer any questions on that, but really, I think that interview really helps set the tone on that, and I'll jump in. Let me sprinkle in a couple of the questions that are coming in, then I'll get back to some of the questions that came in earlier. I'm going to go back up and look at Sean's comments here and see if I can jump on this. Sean says, hey, Jeff, with everything being limited to interstate, if not shut down totally, do you know what junior team scouts, coaches, GMs do as far as recruiting for next year? Sean, great question. The question is simple. People aren't traveling as much. Coaches aren't traveling much. Junior coaches aren't traveling as much. But remember, there's still infrastructure in place. Almost every USHL, NUL, NCDC, BCHL team, they all have their scouts, and their scouts could be the U18 coach in one of the Michigan programs. It could be a scout or player development guy that runs one of the spring and summer showcases. All these people are still actively involved in looking at players, even though things look shut down. So could it possibly mean that some areas get more looks because of this than others? Absolutely. It could mean that because and this is all fictitious. I'm making this up. Let's say Des Moines in the USHL has one person in Detroit and one person in Buffalo, but they don't have a person in Ohio, and the borders get closed or whatever. I'm making this up. So maybe the Ohio kids don't get as much looks as the Detroit kids or the kids out there. But keep in mind this too. The players that are new and coming onto the list are actually 2 and 3 years out. That's those futures kids. The North American Hockey League, the league is essentially 2000s, 01s with some 02s. So you're not going to get, it's not going to affect that league. That league, they know where the players are coming from. The USHL has a younger component, but remember, they have a draft that's to project players out for a couple years out. So those kids will be the kids that will be loading in. They already know where all those kids are at for next year. So really, it's going to be playing catch up for the year after. So I don't think you're going to see a drop off in scouting and pulling the players in the drafts and getting kids signed for next year. It's going to be a scramble for the year after to make sure you catch up on the year after this. So I hope that helps a little bit, Sean. But there's an infrastructure. Every program, even at the premier level, they've got their network of coaches, official or unofficial scouts, and their go-tos. They know a U18 coach over in this area, and remember, those U18 coaches that can't get out of their state or they're locked down right now, they're doing a darn good job of still promoting their players. They're still out there trying to fight and advocate to move their players on. So those things are still happening, Sean, and I hope that you'll see very little effect on players moving forward on this. But there is a pretty good infrastructure set up for all the junior leagues, including the BCHL, the AJ, they all have, a good network there. So great question, though. Thank you so much for that one. Let's jump down and see what Bill has to say here and see what his question is. Bill asks, in today's COVID environment, what's the best way for an 05 goalie to get on the radar? He is physically imposing at 6'5". Holy smokes, get him in basketball, volleyball. That's how you get him done. Whoops, sorry, that dropped off the screen there. But has not had a lot of game time this year due to contracting COVID and New York State limiting games. I'm going to give you the same advice, Bill. I don't think my advice changes for how to get on the radar going forward from here. The regular season for an 05 is good. There's nothing wrong with your regular season. But for an 05, the challenge is getting yourself lined up with a spring program that gets you the ability to be in front of a lot of people in the spring, get the network with a lot of people. And I don't advocate one showcase over the other, but I'll throw a couple out there that are always the go-tos. It's the pre-draft showcase. It's the bean pot in Boston. There's a showcase that the NCDC does for the USPHL. There's one that's big in Tennessee. There's one that's big out in Colorado. There's one in the Detroit market. All of these showcases, you don't have to be at them all. 1, 2, is great. If you go to 3, okay, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong going with 3. I wouldn't say you got to be at 7 or 8 of them. But by going to these showcases, you're getting out and you're getting a chance to have NAHL, USHL, Division III, Division I, ACHA. All these programs are interconnected with these teams. So that's the networking process at 05 is, some people would argue that the spring process is just as important as the regular season process at that age. Now I'll let others argue that, but I'll tell you it's pretty darn important. It's part of the marketing push. So if COVID has slowed you down right now, I would absolutely jump on the bandwagon of making sure that I was doing everything possible to get lined up with great showcases and try to get on the best team possible. Now, I've had every time I say that, I get a lot of direct mails, texts. I get a lot of email conversations going on. Well, how do I find the right team to play for? Which showcase team, or which showcase team? Everybody's different because there's still levels inside of, your son might be, projected as a strong D1 candidate. He might be projected as a strong ACHA candidate. I can't evaluate that right now. But what I can tell you is that there's a showcase that's built for that. And there's a showcase team that's built for that. If you get on one of the great showcase teams, there's a good chance that guy is connected with a solid junior program with affiliate teams. So, for example, and I've used this example before, Rock City Elite is Matt Dibble. And Matt is not a coach in the sense of he runs this as a business. He does coach the teams, and he's a pretty darn good guy. But the real part of getting on one of his teams is, and by no means I'm saying is he the only guy. There's tons of great guys out there, but they're all similar. Matt is connected with a North American Hockey League team. He also has a lot of connections with USHL teams. The North American Hockey League team has their affiliates below them. So he's able to help players and position them all across the board. And what's happened with these showcase teams over the years, the last 4, 5, 6, 8 years, is these coaches never used to get any credit or any respect from college and junior coaches. Now they're go-to people because these teams are loaded with talent, and college coaches and junior coaches respect and actually use these people and leverage them to build their teams. So you can advance the process by getting going there. That doesn't mean you can't still do your emailing, still put together a 30, 40 second video that you can put on email that's on YouTube that you can email out. All those things need to be done. But I'd start looking at the showcases and try to line yourself up with a good showcase team as one of the first steps out there. Hey, I see Steven's on from Scottsdale. Good to see you on. I hope that helped, Bill, in answering your question. Let's jump on to some other questions that came in today as we continue to go. I'm so glad you're sticking with me. Only got a few minutes left, but we'll nail a few of these questions. How do you handle health insurance at the junior level? So your kid graduates high school, goes off and plays juniors. Okay, so this is a great question, and it's an area that is vague for most people. First of all, your player's got to stay on your health plan. Your player has to carry your health card. He's got to be insured, okay? Teams do not pick up the insurance bill. Now, there are teams that if a kid takes a puck to the face, they've got some medical assistance where they can stitch him up. There are some teams that actually have a dentist that they'll take the kid over to, and they'll repair the tooth or shave down a cracked tooth or epoxy up whatever they got to do. But that's not the norm. The norm is your health insurance plan's got to still be in place. You've got to make sure that your health insurance plan's there. There's people out there that are a lot more detail oriented on what the health insurance rules are. I know my daughter is in law school and she's 24, 25 years old. I should know her age, 25, and she's still on her healthcare plan. So I know that it can still be in place, for older teens, especially since most junior players play at juniors until they're 20, 21 years old. So there shouldn't be an issue there. But no, the team won't pick up. Now you get into the major junior programs, different story. I'm not talking about major juniors. I'm talking about CGHL in Canada, and I'm talking about the American Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 system. Not designed to do anything for healthcare for you on the norm. Now, there are some programs that will pick up. And obviously, if it's something that's directly related to negligence, that's a whole different ball of wax. But don't expect healthcare. When you sign with a USHL team, they don't go, hey, healthcare is provided. Anytime you got a sniffle, we'll just send you right over to the clinic and you'll see a doctor. No, that's not the case. Now, most junior teams have a trainer, and a lot of these trainers are qualified, and they're very good at, even helping kids out with the cold and the flu and things like that. Now, COVID is a different story, but they're very, very good on making sure that the kids are taken care of with, hydration and with nutrition. And, every year this gets stronger and stronger, but most programs have good trainers involved. But trainers are not, doctors, and they're not in place of doctors. They'll help you with a pulled muscle. They'll help you with a strain. They'll help you with a bruise. But anything above and beyond that, that's where your healthcare plan kicks in. So hopefully that helps on that question there. Another question came in about cancellation. And should teams be canceling games if one kid on the roster is either exposed or gets COVID, and should it shut down the whole team, and should the whole look, junior teams are in a real tough spot right now. College teams are too, because there's slaves to many different masters on this right now. Not only do you have the league and you have USA Hockey or Hockey Canada, but you've also got your local community. You have the rules of the rink you play out of, because remember, that's a business themselves. They have certain guidelines they have to follow too that have nothing to do with your junior team. How many people can come in the building? Hours the building can be open. Certain protocols that have to be met just to have people walk into their business, which is the rink. And some of these buildings are government-owned buildings. They're either owned by the city, the town, the county, the state, whatever owns them, the province. Different people own these buildings, and they have different sets of rules. So, I would not always lay blame on the specific team or league because of it looks like they're knee-jerk on this situation. If you've got all these governing bodies, and you're going to err on the side of making sure that you're compliant. And to be compliant, sometimes it might mean taking a drastic step like not playing a game. Hey, I get it. I'm hearing it every day. Some teams have got 3-4 games in, while other teams in their league have got 10 or 12 in, 15 in, U16, U18, juniors, whatever the case may be. It's tough right now. but we're all dealing with it. We're all fighting the same battle right now. So, which leads into the next question. I hope that helps a little bit about that. And that question came in from Texas, and want to give a shout out to the Weaver family down there in Texas, one of the best billet families ever out of the Odessa area. The question came in about jumping leagues. So your league is shut down right now. Your league's not playing. They didn't cancel the whole year, but they're suspended. You're a junior and you're 2001, 02, not an 03 or 04. That's really I see no reason for an 03 or 04 or 05 to jump. You've got time. Okay. Now, I can understand somebody that's a 2000 or an 01 feeling like, the clock's ticking. 2000 is the last year. The clock's ticking. Do I wait it out? How long do I wait it out? I get it. I understand that. But at the same time, are you jumping, out of the frying pan into the fire? The biggest problem right now is, where do you run for cover in a situation like this where, you look at the southwest of the United States, it looked perfect 3 months ago. It looked like there was, that was the place to be, the haven for hockey. The numbers were extremely low on everything. It didn't look like there were going to be any problems. And all of a sudden it was a complete 180. That became the incubator for, the pandemic, and the numbers rose drastically. So if you ran down there, do you ask for a trade, or do you quit that league if you're playing, in the NA3HL, or you're playing in the NAHL and try to jump and, go somewhere else? Well, we know you can't go over the border with any kind of reasonable effort to play in the BCHL at this point, or to play in any of the Canadian leagues. So really leaving the United States is a really tough feat right now. Might have been easier for some a few months ago, but it's really tough right now. So the question is, was posed to me, should I jump? Should I leave right now? And the only answer I can give is, where are you going to go? Okay, yes, the NCDC and the USPHL have a bubble situation set up, but it's not perfect, and it's not proven yet. And it's in a state that has a lot of other issues going on right now. Could it be the place to go? Sure. But because of the push down, and because of the fact that there is a demand, the supply and demand, the supply of great players right now at all the top levels, USHL, North American Hockey League, and the NCDC, if you're not a top player, nobody wants you right now. And that's not, I'm just being honest, I'm being blunt. You've got to come in right now. If you want to play in the North American Hockey League and you're walking in, there are players walking back from the Ivy League to go back and play in the North American Hockey League. That would have been unheard of last year or the year before. It might have been rare occurrences, but now it's not. It's not at all. So you just be careful what you're wishing for if you think you got to leave. I'd be very cautious on leaving because your team's suspended, or your team's slow, or you're not going to get as many games in as you got in last year. Everybody's dealing with this right now. I don't think there's a safe haven to run to, at least, from, the little perch that I'm looking at the world of hockey from right now. I don't see a safe haven anywhere. Even a bubble right now does not guarantee you safe haven. It just means that there's a concerted effort being put together that's unified in one spot. So, that's the way I'm seeing that. Not sure if you agree or not. Put your comments on there. I'd love to hear what you have to think about that. Two more quick ones. Jumping leagues to play. Oh, here's another one real quick. Question came in. U18 players. It seemed that one of our listeners, one of our viewers, brought the question up, and I apologize for not. I tried to throw these up on the screen, put a name to these. Said, hey, I've seen a lot of U18 players playing junior hockey right now, and I think this was NCDC related. Is this by design, or is this to bolster rosters that are hurt from COVID? The answer is yes. I mean, every year you're always going to see U18 players getting opportunities to play in the USHL, the NCDC, the North American Hockey League, BCHL, AJ, CCHL, Premier League, you're always going to see U18 players up. Sometimes, depending on the schedule, injuries, illness, you can see 3 U18 players in the roster on one weekend. There are teams in the North American Hockey League in the East, there's a couple specifically, that there's never a practice where there's not 5, 6, or 7 U18 players that are brought in from all over the nation to skate with that team for the week, or 3 days, 4 days. And because some of these areas are shut down right now and their U18 teams don't have games, there's no reluctancy for a U18 coach to let a player go for a week and spend time with a junior team and possibly get some game time in too. So I think this is very related to COVID. I think it's getting back to the point about recruiting for next year. I think any junior team that is not taking advantage of the fact that they can have these kids in the camp and skating with their team frequently now, because a lot of these players don't have any place to skate or play, it'd be foolish for a junior team not to take advantage of it. So I think it's twofold. Yes, some of these teams maybe have players that are actually recovering or quarantined or self-quarantined. I don't know that. But I know that, from a general manager's, owner standpoint, or a coach's standpoint, the hats I've worn, I'd be literally figuring out every single market that's got great teams that are not playing right now, that got their games canceled for the weekend. And I'd be having those players come in immediately. I'd be inviting 3 or 4 of their better players to come into camp or come into my program and skate right away. Now, you can argue, well, it's exposing everybody to more bodies and more people, but you're assuming that everybody's got protocols in place to keep the players safe, and you're assuming that it's something that can be done, and they're doing it legally. You're not going in and out of states that won't allow it. You're not putting yourself into a situation where you're jeopardizing your health. But absolutely would jump on that as much as possible. So what do you think? Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let's see what Steven's got to say. And never one to back off of giving good comment. Steven says, the only hesitation some junior teams don't want to bring U18 kids in is because they're trying to maintain their team bubble. Absolutely true. There are teams that are in a protocol and will not bring teams in, but I've noticed that 2 teams, what they've actually done is they've taken non-rostered players or players that are not dressing, and they're actually skating a 45-minute practice after the main team's out, and they're allowing those U18 players to be around those non-rostered or non-dressing players. So if a team's is dressing 21 for the weekend, and there's 3 or 4 guys that are not in that group, they're segregating that group out, and they're making sure that the main group of players are staying together. But yeah, that's absolutely, Stephen, you're right on the money there. As usual, I absolutely expected a great answer from you on that one. Hey, look, that's all I got for today. I got a ton more stuff I want to get into. I still want to get into the recruiting, the coaching, and the scouting sheet that we talked about a few weeks ago. That wasn't topical. That wasn't urgent. But I really want to go through that sheet and talk about what a coach sits in the stands, what they're looking at and what they're not looking at. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at what your assumptions are, and I'll tease you a little bit. You can have the greatest game ever. You can have your best game ever and have 3 college coaches sitting side by side, and not one of them watches a shift of your game. And it's devastating to think that happens, but it happens every single day that coaches are out there watching. I'll tell you why next Sunday, this coming Sunday at 9 o'clock, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about a lot more things on the Junior Hockey Advisor. Thank you so much. Do me a favor. If you like this broadcast, put some comments on. If you really like this, invite a friend. Share this and let them know about this. Make sure you're part of our junior hockey discussion group. It's awesome. It's one of the fastest growing junior. It is the fastest growing junior group out there right now, as far as Facebook groups go. Jump on, grab some free content. Go to juniorhockeyadvisor.com. There's tons of free content. There's articles. There's videos. We're on YouTube. Find something you like. Enjoy what we're doing. Ask questions. Get better at this process. This is all about learning. I'm learning every day in this, but I'm trying to help you learn too, so you get better at learning how this process works and where and how things fit together and how you can take advantage of putting yourself in the best spot moving forward. Once again, thank you for Wednesday night. We had a good crowd tonight. Thank you for your comments. I sure appreciate all your comments. Make sure you just please follow us, like us, do all that. You hear all those people say it all the time, but it does matter to us. And share this if you can. Have a great night, everybody. And we'll see everybody Sunday night, 9 o'clock on the Junior Hockey Advisor. See ya.